Around 13 was when I started to get into stand-up. I watched a lot of SNL and like The Office and The Daily Show and Seinfeld. They all said they took them 10 years. So I was like, oh, I better get a move on. The 24-hour news cycle is a new phenomenon in the last 25 years. One of the first examples of this is 9/11. What it's doing to our brains and what it's doing to society, it's like, we don't know. It's like crazy to think last year to go from this year of like, everything has changed and all of a sudden I have like way more eyes on me. And I used to have a joke where my mom had a necklace that said fun and easy. I was like, Mom, that's not the same thing.
Hey guys, welcome back to Ease. Today we're sitting down with comedian, tour guide, and history lover, LizaBanks. LizaBanks, thanks for being here today.
Thanks for having me, you guys.
I
I'm
love
so
you.
excited. I love you guys too. Best trio ever.
Best
trio.
We're just hanging.
We're just having a great
We run
vibe.
this town.
I wanted to ask you, you started doing tours in DC before you moved here.
Yeah.
And you obviously are a comedian and you
Mhm.
do stand-up. Where is the link between like comedy, tour, being like a history buff?
Totally. It was really interesting because I started doing tours kind of by accident. I got like fired from a job and they fired me and I was like, thank God. There was a few people there that were
Oh, no.
awesome, but they just like, it did rattle me because I was like, why did I just get fired? Like I was like, what happened? And I was at like a time in my life where I was like, what's going on? What am I doing? I just finished grad school for journalism. So, but I didn't want to be a journalist. I wanted to be a journalist, I thought, when I started it. And then halfway through, I was like, oh, it's bleak out there. So I was like, I don't want to do that, but I want to do something like adjacent to that. I got fired from this job and was like, what do I do? And I found like on Glassdoor, like a tour lead job.
Oh.
And I just thought like, this would be more fun than scooping ice cream. Do you know what I mean? Like I was just like, let me get a summer job.
Mhm.
And I loved it. And it was, I like immediately was like, oh, this is so similar to stand-up. Because you're saying similar things to new groups of people every day.
How do you get used to the repetition of it all?
In both instances, you're creating this illusion that it's almost like the first time you're saying it.
That's true.
And you're tailoring it to whoever your audience is. So you're like trying to find out things about them that will like gear you towards like what's going to be the best thing to deliver this. Like it's like kind of like psychology. And you figure out like a rhythm and how to like best deliver something, or like an extra riff will come out and you're like, oh, works. I'm going to keep doing it. Or that didn't work. I'll stop doing it. And it like evolves and changes over time. So I was like, oh, this works really well for stand-up. I'm just going to keep doing this. And at first I was like a bad tour guide. Like I was like, because they just kind of like threw me in. They found out I did stand-up in the job interview and they gave me the job. And I didn't know my stuff. And I was like, ugh. And then I kind of like learned, you like baptism by fire, just like learn it.
Oh my God.
Yeah. And there was like a couple times where I like majorly messed up in that summer in DC. And I like learned all these things about being a tour guide that you're like supposed to do or not supposed to do. And then when I moved to New York, it was actually so funny because I didn't know anything about New York. I knew some stuff, but in DC, I grew up there. So I like had a good background on DC stuff. And I've always been kind of a history person. And then when I moved to New York and I started doing Grand Central, my little trick was I would ask people, I was like, raise your hand if it's your first time in Grand Central. And people would raise their hand and I'd be like, okay, you're seeing Grand Central with a fresh set of eyes. What you see might be different than what I see. Like point something out or like let me know what you see and ask questions about it so that I can like add it to my tour or like I'll find out what it is if I don't know it or I'll know it. And then I would ask people, raise your hand if you're from New York or you've been in Grand Central before. And like 9 times out of 10, there was a group of people who were from New York that were on the tour.
I like that.
And that's how I pieced it all together. Because over time, people were like, oh, I used to commute through in the 80s when the ceiling was covered up. And I was like, oh, the ceiling was covered up. And I like kind of got to know the evolution of it. And now my through line with Grand Central is the story of Grand Central is the story of New York. The ups and downs of Grand Central follow the ups and downs of New York City. So it's like if you follow the history of Grand Central, you can also track like New York's struggle and triumph kind of at the same time.
I see.
So they're kind of like intertwined was kind of like the through line that I like created out of people telling me their versions of stories.
You're a genius.
It was really fun.
That's
I mean,
crazy.
Crazy, right?
In stand-up, do you think that when you deliver a joke, you see how the audience reacts?
Yeah.
That makes you be like, okay, tomorrow I'm going to say it in a different way?
Say in a different way. Totally, yeah.
Really?
Yeah, definitely. And certain crowds go a certain way. Yeah, the audience will be so honest with you.
Yeah.
Because they will like either laugh or not. And you have other jokes that you know work and they get a huge laugh. And then you do a new joke and it doesn't get as big of a laugh and you're like, I have to keep working on it.
Well, actually, I wanted to ask you about that. We know that you've been doing stand-up since you were 15.
Yeah. Cringe. Like it was just sort of like I don't know what was going on. And I like should be better. I I should be better now. No, but it was also like once a week, maybe.
Well, literally in this video that we watched.
The Washington Post.
Yes,
thing,
so good.
I wanted to be a TV writer. I was a big comedy nerd. I listened to like podcasts. I went to shows. I would go to shows by myself.
At what age?
I was such a weirdo. Around 13 was when I started to get into stand-up. My mom, remember like iTunes?
Yes.
I bought like Kevin Hart's album. I bought like Jim Gaffigan's album, Aziz Ansari. And my mom like found it on the Apple receipts and like changed our Apple password to Christian values. She was like, "What are you listening to?" But I was like, it was so good. And then I started listening to podcasts about comedy. I watched a lot of SNL and like The Office and The Daily Show and Seinfeld. They all said they took them 10 years. So I was like, oh, I better get a move on.
I gotta start now.
That's kind of was like my thought process.
Big brain.
Big brain. It didn't really pan out the way that I like envisioned it at 13, obviously. I thought, I can't be a TV writer tomorrow, but I could like go try stand up. And I was going to shows and I was like going up to people after shows being like, how do I do stand up? Which is
Oh
so
my God.
embellishing now.
No, that's so amazing.
Isn't
that's
that
like
crazy?
ambitious.
It was very ambitious. I ran into a comedian, Judah Friedlander, who is one of the first comedians I saw live. I've probably seen him like 5 or 6 times, but the last time I saw him, he somehow like connected it and was like, I met you and you were like 15. And I was like, yeah.
I wanted to ask you, like, at 15, you're like doing stand up for the first time. What's it like entertaining adults?
It was weird for them, cool for me. I think the things that I gleaned from starting at a young age weren't things on stage, but things off stage, like how comedy goes, how things run, how people are. Very strange, like a very weird underworld. Adults are strange.
Yeah.
And that was like the thing. I was like, you're supposed to be like put together and you're like a raging alcoholic. I don't know, like weird guys. And like, I thankfully, like nothing bad ever happened or anything, but it was just like a weird world to be a part of. And what was happening when I was 15 was because I was like a young girl, normal people who were like the best comedians stayed 10 feet away from me. Rightfully so, totally. But what that meant was the strange ones felt a certain kinship with me because I was also part of the clown show. Because I was a freak too, because I was like the 15-year-old girl. So they were more familiar and like talked to me. And it was like not the people I wanted to talk to. Because I wanted to talk to the real people who I thought were really funny. But they were like 25-year-olds just like hanging out with their friends doing comedy. They did not want to befriend a 15-year-old. But I didn't really like being the kid because I was like, I just want to do stand-up.
Yeah.
You know, I don't want to be like this other thing.
What I really love about it is that you kind of leaned into it. Like,
I had to.
Yeah. It was so good, though.
Yeah, it was really funny. The reason I got that Washington Post article is because there was this other kid who did stand-up and his parents were like stage parents. And my parents are the best. And they're the kind of parents that were like, yeah, you can do that. But this other guy was like, his parents were like writing his jokes and like sitting in the front row. Very weird. And they were pushing for some article about him. And then this writer from the city paper, they found out about it and they did us together. And then the Washington Post did an article about me. But it's also so funny because I was like, this guy's parents basically inadvertently were my PR. You know what I mean?
They helped you.
And they definitely didn't want that or mean for that to happen. But
I hear all of these like horror stories from comedians talking
Yeah.
about the audience and even almost like sometimes being like rejected by the audience or like
Totally.
audience members doing something crazy to them during a performance.
Yeah.
Have you ever had anything like that?
I've had some peculiars. I've had like hecklers for sure.
Really?
Yeah. I mean, we always do.
What's that like?
It's like really fun to be someone like us
Mm-hmm.
and to be like, I'm like pretty chill, pretty nice. And to just every once in a while, just be like, shut the fuck up. And people are like, they're like,
And
and
they
it's
say
really-
that?
I say that.
Oh!
I say that to them. And I'm like, I kind of go crazy on them. And I'm like, yeah, this is awesome because I never get to do that. And it's in me. One time last summer, it wasn't me being heckled, but it was someone I know. And it was a show that was outside at a club. And these guys drove by, like a pack of boys on city bikes drove by on the other side of the street. And they were heckling her and they were like yelling like misogynistic, women shouldn't be on stage, women aren't funny. I was done with my shows. And I've experienced something similar before. Like every female comedian has at some point. I like ran to the corner where they were. And it was like a pack of like 8 of them. And I go, who said that? I go, which one of you said that? And they were like, oh, they pointed to a kid down the street. They're like, oh, is that little boy? I was like, you're a And I like
No, they
went
lied.
crazy. And just being like, you would never do that. You could never get on stage and do that. I started kicking their bikes. And they like had to walk. They were like rolling away. It was
You're
really
like,
bad.
I
And I
know.
was like, adrenaline was pumping. I should have brought somebody with me Like in hindsight,
I do think feminine rage is so real. Like
I agree.
we get so pissed about these things. So at least
Yeah.
you're like putting them in their place a little bit. But yeah, you gotta be cautious.
You gotta be cautious. And I think actually some of it comes from stuff that happened to me when I was younger, when I was
Mm.
doing comedy between 15 to 21, where there was like certain things that happened in my prefrontal cortex mind. I didn't really register them, or later on they had like a profound impact on me that they were like, I was like, oh, that was like not okay. And that just clicked for me.
You said,
You're
hold on,
like,
we're
oh, shit.
connecting dots.
Literally, I was like, wait, that is exactly why I'm like this now.
Okay, I kind of wanted to go back talking about comedy because I find it so intriguing, and I also kind of want to like pick your brain on how you, I guess, process being on stage and feeling the pressure of a whole audience looking at you, feeling comfortable within that pressure. Isn't that like literally a part of the job?
Yeah. Well, I think like right now, currently, like it's so funny to have this the day after I had this like jitter attack like last night.
Yeah.
And then I also had something on Friday that was like I felt a lot of pressure about. And it was just kind of like a weird environment. And I think it's different moments or different like different crowds or different ways, but like you can kind of have the constant of like the constant is yourself. So you're sort of like, I know myself. I know what I'm doing. I do have a voice now that I feel like I'm super comfortable with. And so I feel like myself on stage, which I think is huge. You know, like when people first start doing stand-up, they're like, what should I wear? How should I be? And like you eventually get to a place where that comes naturally because you figure out who you are on stage. And if you're yourself, then that's like I think the funniest version. If you are funny, some people are not funny.
No, I agree.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think people can feel the authenticity. So I feel like that's like how I like handle the pressure and like confidence. So many people are like, you're so brave. I'm like, I don't feel like that. But it's something people say to comedians a lot. And I think it's because when you go to a show, you feel like you're kind of nervous for the comedians, right? You kind of feel nervous.
Yes.
So when a comedian gets on stage and is at ease and is like, I'm chilling, you're gonna have a good time, don't worry about it.
Yeah.
They like exude that, then you are like, oh yeah, okay, we're good.
You know yourself so well that you use your own stories to like make
Yeah.
light of a situation. Because I
Yeah.
watched a few of your skits and I was
Yeah.
like, that's hella funny.
Okay, cool. I'm glad you guys like that. And I don't
Yeah.
do a lot of crowd work, which people do, which you can do and like not make fun of people's appearances and just kind of like
Exactly.
make people feel comfortable. I definitely will sometimes draw the audience in.
Acknowledging them? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, acknowledging them. And I honestly don't know where. This must be from tour guiding, but like using people's names and talking to them, like directly referencing them. It's something I do on my tours a lot. On Saturday, I did a group tour, and there was like this guy, Marty, and he was like a legend. And he was just like an older New Yorker, and he rolled up smoking a cigar, and he was like a very interesting guy. And so I would just like kind of like not poke fun at him, but like be like, yeah, and what about that, Marty? During the tour,
I
so that
love
he
that.
felt involved.
Yeah.
And I like knew him by name, and I would do that with other people too. I think that bleeds into stand up.
If you feel like people can tell that comedians are nervous, so let me just like embody confidence and actually take that energy of like pressure and just be like so still in myself.
Yeah.
Is that what it is? Do you
Kinda like
just
that.
feel kind of like so grounded in yourself that you're like, even if I fuck this up, I'll bounce back, it's fine?
Yeah. And I think it's tough with stand up because I do care about it a lot. So I get nervous about it. But that is sort of like once you get into that, like, who cares? Like, I'm just gonna like try to rip it. And I think those people are the best at comedy. But I still like kind of struggle with it sometimes because I'm like, and I think especially I was talking to someone about it last night. I've like experienced some success, but it's also I'm at the beginning of my career. But it seems like, fingers crossed, I'll have a career.
Girl, yes.
Hopefully.
Oh, yes.
The struggle that I'm having is like, yeah, in the last year. It's like crazy to think last year to go from this year of like everything has changed and all of a sudden I have like way more eyes on me. Oh God. So it's added pressure and I'm sometimes like struggling to stay grounded in myself of like, oh, there's like people paying attention now. Going from a year ago of like nannying in Chelsea to like now being like, what am I doing on a Thursday? I'm gonna do a podcast with some my girls, my besties, you know? Like it's like wild. I'm like, what the hell?
No,
is
yeah,
going on?
yeah. I saw something because I used to get so nervous whenever I performed in front of people in any capacity. Like right now, like if there was people like watching, I would be so nervous.
Yeah.
Because I was like, fuck, like that's adding on pressure. So now I have to really deliver.
Yeah.
And it would distract me. And then I learned that like when you have that pressure or when like people are watching you, it should be almost like an invitation to like continue being yourself, like
Yeah.
fully, truly just being
Yes,
yourself.
and totally. That I like that a lot. That's
Yeah,
a
I
really
do
good
like
way to
that
look at
too.
it. And that's how it feels. Like it doesn't feel like nobody's putting that on me except for myself.
Mm-hmm.
And also I think with stand up, you just have to be like so delusional. So delusional to be like I'm going to do this. This is going to be me.
What was the age that you realized this is what I want to do?
It's
This is my passion. This is what I want my
like
career to be.
13, 14, 15. I was like, I love this. I
Oh,
love
right
it.
from the start.
From
when
the
you saw
jump.
it.
I did it because I thought I wanted to be a TV writer, and then I did it, and I was like, wait, I like this. And I think I just like was really drawn to it. There was something about it that was so pure and like cool and connected to the room you're in, and I thought it was awesome. And I just think it's such a beautiful art form, and so it is such a delusional, narcissistic thing to be like, yeah, it's gonna be me.
I feel like that was actually the angle, I guess, for this episode that I
Mhm.
found interesting. Like the
Yeah.
fact that we're all very much like on the come up. And that's
Yes.
awesome.
It's really cool.
Because I feel like
fun.
you watch a lot of entertainers and the really successful ones have been around for years and years and years
Mhm.
and they're like already established.
Yeah.
You being like, I'm at the beginning of my career, that's so cool. There's so much like trial and tribulation and like
100%.
growth that's gonna happen. Eventually you'll be able to like look back
Look
at this
Yeah.
if you don't cringe.
I know.
'Cause
Hopefully
always
I won't cringe at this part, but I think I'll look back on 2026 and 26, like the year I turned 26 is like, okay, this was like when it started, hopefully.
Mhm.
And that is the thing about like longevity. You're like, that idea of the best thing is in front of you. I'm like super subscribed to. I'm like, that has to be the thing,
Mhm.
hopefully.
Mhm.
That you're like, the best thing I've made is, no, I've not yet made it. That's like really the goal is to make good work. And so, yeah, I know. It's like wild.
I
I'm like,
love that.
Yeah.
Do you ever like look at younger you and you're like, damn, she was really delusional, but like good for her. Like she was ballsy, but like good for
100%.
her.
In the ages between 16 to 18, I'm grateful for the perspective I had that because I played sports. And I remember I was getting recruited to Berkeley, and my coach, who I played for, eventually was like, so this stand-up thing you do, like, what's up with that? And I could tell she was kind of like, what is that? Like, or is this gonna be something that distracts? I was like, there are two things I love to do: play lacrosse and do stand-up, but I only have a certain amount of time to play lacrosse.
Mm.
I said that at like 16 on my recruiting trip, and I got the offer immediately after and committed. Well, I didn't commit in the moment, but I got the offer, and I was like, oh, that was the right thing to say. But it's what I meant. But I think I'm glad that I didn't like not go to college, move to LA, and try to do stand-up.
Mm.
I was like, I'm gonna just go to college, be normal, like play lacrosse, do stand-up if I can, and then like it'll always be there, and I'll come back to it. And I kind of always knew that I would. But it was really difficult for some years in college when I couldn't do it as much as I wanted to because I was playing sports. And the pandemic was a brutal, brutal time because I was so excited to turn 21. But I didn't do stand-up. I didn't do Zoom shows. I didn't do outdoor shows. I like quit in my mind
For
like a good year and a half.
okay.
March of 2020 through July of 2021. For me, I had a lot of experiences during that time, you know, going home, being in DC, being in Oakland, being in the Bay, seeing like some of the social and economic impacts of COVID and getting this like new perspective on privilege and your place in society and all this stuff that I didn't have. And it's what prompted me to go to grad school for journalism because I thought all this stuff is going on, I want to cover it. I think it made me mature a lot during that time. I was like becoming an adult and being like, yeah, who do you want to be?
You said that you wanted to be a journalist, but then you
Mhm.
kind of changed. And it's kind of like what you're doing now is journalism, but
Yeah.
entertaining. And
Mhm.
that's so you're like
Yeah.
grasping people's attention in different ways.
Yeah. I think we're in this new age of journalism.
Mhm.
And I wouldn't consider myself a journalist, but I would say it's like journalistic adjacent. I used some of the things I learned in grad school, but it was, crazy. I like to make information accessible through
Anything.
anything.
Touring, everything.
Tours, like
History.
content,
got it.
comedy,
Yeah.
like making it like easy to approach something that's like seems intimidating, like the Met.
Yeah.
Like, let me make you feel like it belongs to you. Because it does.
Mm-hmm.
And like, don't be scared of it. And like, take whatever I'm giving you and like, that's yours now.
And I think people
love
should
that.
appreciate that more. I love that you're doing that.
Yeah, totally. And I feel like we're in that age or in that like, we're in this like kind of world. I think with the internet,
Yeah.
there is like so many sides to it that are good and bad. And I think gratefully I've tapped into this side that's like, hopefully a value add and good.
No, for sure.
Because it's like, I'm actually going to give you
Yes.
information that's not like, it's not just slop. Just like, I'm like, here's a thing you can go see
yeah.
outside.
No, for
Get
sure.
outside.
I feel that way when I was watching some of your stuff. 'cause I
Okay,
was
cool.
like,
I'm glad.
oh my gosh, I didn't know so much about New York.
Yeah.
And your friends can only tell you so much because they don't know them.
Yeah.
Unless like people deep dive.
Yeah.
But
I also feel like we're in this moment where people are like searching for information about stuff, about history.
Yeah.
It's like cool to know about stuff again. Because it wasn't like when I was a kid, I was like all nerdy and like loved like books and reading and history.
Yes, Same.
And yeah. And like, no, literally. And people were like, okay.
that was
Like
me.
were you like that?
Yeah, but now that I'm like, if I could watch someone like you, I'm like, hell yeah, I'll watch.
Yeah.
Like,
But
no
at the
way.
time when we were kids, like we didn't know that it was gonna be cool or that like it would be
Yeah.
presented as cool. We were just like the weirdos. Like I was the weirdo. I was like obsessed with comedy. Were any of my girlfriends like into comedy when they were 13? Oh.
But now,
But now, yeah, now they think it's cool.
Mhm.
But yeah, it was just so
Mhm.
funny. Like
that's
I was like definitely a weird kid.
I
I was like the weirdo. Were you like the weird kid too?
I had like moments before school where during summer I was like, I want to do a worksheet.
Yeah.
I'm like, let's lock in and do a worksheet
Oh,
before
yeah.
school starts.
Totally. You were doing that summer stuff way before.
Yeah, I don't know
Yeah.
why. So, for our audience and
Mhm.
also aspiring comedians,
Yeah.
when you bomb a joke, what is that like? How do you recover?
You think about it when you fall asleep at night. Yeah. When you bomb a joke, it's just like part of the process.
Okay.
I saw this great comedian last night who was on the show I was on. It's so freaking good. His name's Jeffrey Asmus. He's like such an unbelievable writer and just so funny. And he said this thing, which I've heard before, but it's like so funny. Songwriters, musicians, like they get to just like lay a song, write it. It's good, put it out. Comedians, you have to go out. You think a thought and then you have to go say it out loud to an audience to make it good. You can't just like think of something, it's funny, and then put it on stage and it's funny. You like have to like work on it in front of an audience, which is so embarrassing.
That's
In real time?
In real time,
You
like
don't have-
you can write things and then
Mhm.
like present them, but you'll have to make adjustments or like how you say it will change over time or like whatever. So it's just like par for the course, and like you kind of get used to it. I think generally I'm like I have to do this new stuff. I have to work on this new stuff. It might bomb, but like whatever. I'll have things before and after it to back it up. But yeah, bombing is just part of it.
Whoa.
You just have to.
Do you-
Yeah.
There's a comedian I work with, Sean Patton, who I like open for sometimes. He's so funny. He was on the show English Teacher on FX. He has this analogy he uses where he's like, it's like a knife that you're like constantly like sharpening. And you're like literally going from like this like dull knife to like making it as sharp as possible. And you just kind of constantly have to like, and it's crazy. Or this other comedian the other night said, diamonds are made under pressure.
Oh, that's good.
Because sometimes you have to go after people who crush, and that's really hard to do.
Oh shit.
That's like a challenge.
We have a segment. We know you've lived a lot of different lives
Mhm.
as a tour guide, comedian, history buff, etc. So, we want to hear some of your history hot takes.
Okay.
So, we have questions for you.
Okay.
And just tell us what you think.
Okay, totally.
Okay, hottest historical figure.
Richard Nixon.
That was fast.
That was
Richard
fast.
Nixon.
She thought about
no,
this
I don't think he's
before.
sexy, but I do have a fascination with him. I mean, maybe JFK. Like, tell me why like Van Gogh like might have been sexy. Something about a misunderstood man.
Without an ear.
I think like pre-ear. Pre-ear cutoff, hot. Historical figure. JFK is a good one.
Are you locking that in?
I'm locking that in. JFK.
JFK.
Yeah.
Okay. Least favorite era in history.
Ooh, least favorite era in history. Well, I'm biased towards American history, so I'm gonna say the 1600s. Like religious war, like ugh, I don't care. Like I'm like Protestants versus Catholics, like
True. I literally fell asleep in those classes.
like the 1600s for me. Some reason I'm like I don't. It's boring.
Favorite era in history.
Ooh, post World War II through the 60s and 70s are really interesting to me. Like Vietnam War, American consumerism, abstract expressionist movement happening in New York. It's when New York becomes the center of the art world. Is in the 1960s and 70s, like Keith Haring, Jackson Pollock, those guys like start to come up in New York, and people are like, whoa. And the Europeans start to turn their heads and say, oh, there's actually something interesting going on in America. Like Nixon is really interesting to me. Like 1968 presidential election is my favorite one. So yeah, the 60s and 70s into the 80s and 90s. And then like the dot-com boom, the late 90s with like Silicon Valley, when like all these internet companies, Yahoo, AOL, started popping up. It was really interesting.
Favorite exhibit at the Met.
I really liked last year's Sargent in Paris show. John Singer Sargent, who's a very famous American artist. They had a big exhibit of his last summer that was really cool that I liked a lot. And Lillian Bassman is on right now. That one's really good.
I've always wanted to see the costume institute.
It just reopened or just opened up.
And it's good.
It's good, yeah. It's really good. It's cool. I just randomly saw the architects who designed it yesterday at a like talk. which I didn't even mean to, but they're kind of famous now. But there's another one. It's like contemporary portraits, and they just moved it down to the Lehman Wing. And I just popped down there for a second a few days ago, and I haven't really spent a lot of time with it, but it's really cool. Yeah, I just like the Met. There's a lot of aura there.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
I was about to say that. I was like, just being around those pieces. You're
Yes,
like,
and
whoa.
it does something to the people there. You spend a lot of time there, like just something happens to you. If you're like spending a lot of time there, like the security guards are the best there. I love them. They're the closest things I have to coworkers. And talk about a job that's not going to get taken by AI.
True.
Yeah. Shout out. And yeah, they're just like my homies, and they just do such an they just have like a hard job, and they do a great job, and their job is so important. So the security guards, the visitors team people, the staff, like there's a few characters and people that you see a lot, and I'm one of them. I'm like a staple, kind of.
Yeah.
But I'm also not an employee there, so I have kind of a weird like outsider perspective.
Yeah.
Where I'll like never really be in the inside, but I like am there a lot, and I'm
Yeah.
like visible in a weird way.
What's your favorite artist of all time?
Sally Mann, photographer from Virginia.
Mm.
Yeah, Candy Cigarette is one of my favorite pieces of all time by, Sally Mann. She's really
Love
cool.
that.
I just feel a very personal connection to her because she's from Virginia. I like photography. I just bought a piece of art, my first ever real piece of art from this artist named Erin Jane Nelson, who's an artist in Santa Fe. And she does these really cool pieces that are like ceramic photographs. They're like photographs in frames, in ceramic frames. She like makes both. They're very cool. And she's actually at the Whitney Biennial right now. So you can go see her work in New York.
You
Love
know your
her, bro.
stuff.
Yeah, I'm spending a lot of time there. It's cool because the Met is Frida Kahlo. Frida Kahlo's a huge one.
My Shayla.
Dude, talk about my Shayla.
Talk about my
Dude, talk about my Shayla. That woman
Talk
is a
about my
freaking
Shayla.
hero.
Literally.
Bro.
That's my favorite saying of today.
My Shayla. Van Gogh. Now I can't stop. Van Gogh. Yeah.
Ready?
Mm-hmm.
Can you separate art from the artist?
I think you have to sometimes, unfortunately. A lot of them were dicks.
Yeah.
So
They're like deeply flawed like any other human being.
yeah, I know. It's really hard. It's sort of interesting with now with the internet and stuff. We have these like parasocial relationships with like TikTok creators and influencers and stuff. And it's like, it's kind of the same thing where like you might like a movie from a guy and he's like an asshole and you're like, well, he made this good movie. But I think with the caveat that you include that as context. Our relationships with people and their backgrounds are so intrinsically tied to how we understand them.
Yeah.
So you have to like use it, but do you use it against them or for them? I don't know.
Would you say that also applies to some of your favorite comedians?
Oh yeah, for sure.
Really?
Yeah. And it's tough because you like some of them. I mean, I mentioned one of them that I like love and was like so formative to me as a kid. And then like, kind of like violated some women. And you're like, well, that work still means a lot to me. And I think it's sort of a thing where you're like, you actually don't get to take that away.
Yeah.
It's kind of like taking the power back.
That's so true. You definitely do have to separate the art from the artist. Sometimes you literally just have to.
Yeah.
It's just like, to me, a reminder that is like, you can't idolize anyone or put anyone on this pedestal because like we're all human beings at the end of the day.
Took this class. One of the only art history classes I ever took in college was called iconoclasm or iconoclastic. And it's like the destruction of icons. And there's one of the commandments is thou shalt not have any other idols, right? But then there's also this thing that happens that's like in the Bible. Thou shalt not like worship any other gods. Where rich people, kings and queens, they start to depict themselves sort of like their patrons, like Virgin Mary is a big one. Like people sort of like dress like the Virgin Mary and they get their portrait done. And people start to create these like portraits of themselves that then sort of feel worshipped. And then there's this big movement to destroy them all. And there's something about, it's like a movement basically about like the destruction of icons. But it is like weird. Paparazzi, media, all that stuff is new. The 24-hour news cycle is a new phenomenon in the last 25 years. One of the first examples of this is 9/11. People were watching the news. 24-hour news cycle starts in like the late 90s where it's like there's always news on. That doesn't exist before. It's like you read the paper and that's the only brush you get with the news during the day. And then all of a sudden TVs are on all the time. And people are tuning in because what the heck is happening in downtown Manhattan? And millions of Americans watched the second plane hit because they're streaming it, but nobody knows that's what's going to happen. But they're it's happening, and then you see it and how it affects the minds of Americans in the early 2000s, especially with the attitudes around the invasion of the Middle East. People were down because they watched the plane hit the tower. They watched America get attacked and how that like shapes you. Turning a camera onto yourself and filming yourself, that's new.
Yeah.
That's a new phenomenon.
It is.
And what it's doing to our brains and what it's doing to society, it's like, we don't know.
So we're getting into our audience question segment. So we have one serious question and one silly question from a friend of yours.
Hey Elby, it's Marissa. I'm going to ask you a pretty serious question. Buckle in. I would like to know how your relationship to stand-up has changed since you were starting out. And are there any moments in your life, like aha moments or anything pivotal that you remember that really impacted your confidence and ability to get up in front of an audience, whether it's on social media or on stage? Okay, I love you. Bye.
That's my girl. Wow, you should have that girl on. She's a little wicked genius. I love that girl so much. That's my best friend. Oh my
First of
god,
all,
that's
hey
crazy.
Marissa.
I know. I would cry if someone gave me a voice memo of now. I'd be like, no.
Okay, that's a good question, Marissa. That she knows how to cut me like a knife. I think I've had a couple of aha moments. I think doing shows with people I really look up to, like being on shows with them and getting like kudos from them, has been really nice. I had like a few years ago before I moved to New York and DC, I was like pretty down on myself, and I did a show and I didn't realize someone was watching, and they just like said good job, or they like made some comment and like really changed the trajectory of my month. And it was like huge. So I've also tried to do that whenever I see someone who I think is really good. I'm like, good job. I don't like give it out for free, but that was a good aha moment. I'm trying to think of any like New York ones. Just the rubbing shoulders with some of your heroes has been super crazy. And then being like, I'm among them, I'm doing the same thing as them. And I think as I've gotten older and I've kind of gone away from that kid who started and become like myself, that has given me confidence to get on stage. I like sort of funny that we were talking about me at younger stand up, because I kind of keep her further away, keep her in a box. She was awesome and she's still me, but there's sort of like this split between me. And so as I kind of shed that, I was like allowing myself to be like, I'm doing the same thing, but I'm like more myself. I've like come into myself. So that's given me a lot of confidence. But
Your relationship with your younger self, is it kind of like, you're like, I've grown, I've evolved, I'm just not that person anymore?
Yeah, I've grown, I've evolved. I think sometimes I get embarrassed about it because I was just such a little freak nerd and such a like fan of stand-up and was kind of eager and wanting to be accepted. And I think I still am a lot like that, but I kind of feel the confidence now where I'm like, no, I'm doing it. I'm like, my peers, I think having your peers respect you, it's like what you chase as a comedian. So I'm still chasing that, but I mean, you can't worry about it too much. You kind of have to as I say that, I'm also like, I don't care. But then also with this newfound audience, I really want to try to deliver a good show to them. So that's given me a lot of motivation to try to get better. And the fact that people like buy tickets to see you is like such a privilege. So that has like helped in just like motivating me and given me confidence too, to be like, people are coming to see me. So, and what I have is good.
Yeah.
You know, and hopefully that'll change from a question mark to like a exclamation point.
Yeah.
You know?
It will, and it will.
Yeah, but that good question, Marissa.
Now we have Marissa, silly Marissa.
Okay.
Hey LB, it's Marissa. I would love to know, what is your Dunkin' order these days? I know you have like a big range when it comes to coffee, so I would love to know your Dunkin' order, specifically the number of creams and the number of sugars that we're doing. And then if you want to throw in a couple of neighborhood spots that aren't Dunkin', I think the audience would really love to hear.
In college, we would go to Dunkin' Donuts in Berkeley. Like, we would drive like 20 minutes to Dunkin', and I would get a large coffee with 10 cream and 10 sugar. I have a bad coffee addiction.
What?
Yeah, I'm like a coffee fiend, and Marissa's too. Yeah, I make my own coffee every day, actually. So I go, but now my Dunkin' order is a medium coffee with 3 and 3.
Okay.
Medium iced coffee with 3 and 3. Sometimes
Okay.
I'll go crazy and get a large coffee with 5 and 5
What
when
the
I'm
fuck?
feeling insane. Yeah.
That's crazy.
Isn't that crazy?
That's a lot.
And I get the
like
snack
it.
and bacon and the little hash browns.
I love that.
Those are so good.
bro.
Actually,
The
like,
hash
now
browns
I'm
are
like,
so
do I
good.
want that? I'm kind of hungry.
Yeah, honestly, I
Doesn't
had
that
it
sound
the other
good?
day and
It
So
hits.
good, yeah.
Good little breakfast.
Dunkin',
Yeah. And then now, yeah, I make my own coffee every day. So I buy the beans. I go to Paloma, which is in my neighborhood. Really, really, really good.
Mhm.
And great coffee shop. And then there's also really good. Oh Mercy is really good. I like whatever's around. There's some good one on the Upper East Side that I go to by the Met. But yeah, Paloma is like my go-to. That's a really good spot. And they have a good bakery too.
What's your home order?
I have a coffee maker called the Mocha Master. Buy it for life. Talk about a good subreddit. Buy it for life. It'll last you a lifetime. It's so good. And then I grind the beans in the morning.
Ooh.
And then it's a drip coffee.
Ooh.
I like a medium roast. I like South America roast. Like I love like Peru, Brazil. But there's some other good ones. But yeah.
Brazil.
But my friends in Brazil. You know, like people talk about that.
I'm like an iced chai kind of girl.
I do like an iced chai.
Really?
Dirty chai with espresso.
Ooh, I'm down.
Oh my God. The last time I went to Dunkin', I was driving to Boston and I stopped at a Dunkin' in Connecticut and I asked for dirty chai. I was like, can you put 2 shots of espresso in there? And it was like this girl had never seen the light of day. She was like, what? I was like, yeah, can you put 2 shots of espresso in the chai to make it a dirty chai? And she was like, are you sure? And I was like, yeah. And she was like, never heard of that one. I was like, that's crazy.
A dirty
but-
chai?
Well, sending 2 shots.
Yeah.
Was like crazy for her in a medium. It was horrible, actually.
We're moving on to
Watercolor.
Hey!
Hey.
You knew what was going on. So for this segment, we really want you to feel at ease. Paint whatever your younger self would want to paint or something that you resonate with right now. The whole point is to take you to the younger Liza Banks. Doodle what you probably would have drawn in kindergarten.
Okay.
While you do that, we'll ask you a question, not too
Okay,
serious.
cool. Okay,
but-
okay.
yeah.
Okay, cool. Okay, love. For a long
Forward.
time, watercolor was the medium that women were permitted to paint. Like we couldn't paint anything else because it was seen as like delicate. Yeah, it was like the medium, the format that women were like, this is what they could do. But it's actually like a very difficult thing.
It is.
And it's kind of interesting because it's hard to accomplish, but it was seen as like, oh, it's for the ladies, it's like feminine, but it's like very hard. I just saw this artist installation, Danielle McKinney, and I think she's based in New York actually, and she was a photographer and then she like decided to start doing like watercolor and oil paintings, and she's like an amazing painter, but her watercolors are like unbelievable.
Wait, that's so cool that you know these facts.
I learned
You're so
that
wise.
through this Danielle McKinney show, and I was like, wait, that's crazy. She was like kind of taking it back.
So we've talked about this whole time, just like you in comedy. You said you went to Berkeley, and you said you are touring currently right now. Aside from that, you also do stand-up comedy. Taking off all of those parts of you, we want to know who Liza Banks is not in front of the camera.
I think I'm actually probably a little bit more low key than I am online or like what people see. One of my big goals last year was to like continue to like show up for my friends and my family. Try to be a good friend because I feel like I have a lot of people who support me. So I just try to be as good of a friend as I can be. And I just like bullying with my friends. I've gotten into card games with my friends, which is so funny. It's so old coded. I used to be like, ugh, not for me. And now I'm like, wait, let's play Monopoly Deal. It's
And now
the
it's so
best.
fun. Like
I
out
love
of-
Monopoly.
yeah,
Monopoly Deal
all
is
of
the
it.
best.
Yeah.
It
Wait, what's the
rocks.
difference between Monopoly and
cards?
Monopoly Deal?
It's a card game, yeah. It's the card game. It's so fun to play at like a bar. It's really fun. It gets really heated. For all my being out and about, I like love to garden.
Really?
Yeah, I have a backyard. I love to garden. I hopefully don't have to leave my place. And I get to stay there so I can plant tulips again.
Oh.
So I like gardening. Yeah, I feel like it's important to have hobbies.
What do you think is the correlation between a comedian being silly, goofy, funny, but also being deep, sensitive, very emotional?
The correlation is making that connection without seeming like you're doing it on purpose. Being funny, but also like cutting to the core. It's hard to do, but it's like a fine line, but it's very good. It can be really hard to convince people to like follow you down a road that is like a little bit scary and like maybe a topic that's touchy. But it's when you can do it well, I think it's the best. But also like with comedy, it's funny though because you don't have to be that deep. Like, it doesn't have to be that complicated to be funny. It's like the most simplest stuff is the best. You have to like remind yourself of that sometimes.
Yeah.
Sometimes I go a little too like, I'm trying to be prophetic, and it's like, no, just be funny.
Yeah, just
like
be
that's
funny.
like the number one thing is just be funny.
I feel like you see a lot of comedians like Steve Carell and Pete Davidson.
Mhm.
And like you see these really funny, lighthearted people also have this side of them that is more like, I'm actually a deeply sensitive person.
Yeah, totally.
Do you relate to that?
Yeah, for sure. I think I have like I'm sensitive, but I'm also I have like a hard shell exterior, but I try to be very introspective and very empathetic, and I'm very sensitive to how other people are feeling.
Yeah,
So I want them to feel comfortable. I think that's a big tour guide thing with tours, making people feel like they belong in New York, and that there's because as a visitor you feel like overwhelmed, overstimulated, like what's going on, and for like whatever amount of time, 2 hours, an hour and a half, I'm with you, and I'm like everything's good.
Yeah.
Don't have to worry about where you're going. There's so much of comedy that you don't see that like for the 10 minutes I'm on stage, there's so much else happening. So I'm thinking really deeply about a lot of stuff that then like comes out, but in this subtle way that you're like, you don't realize what goes into it, you know? And hopefully you shouldn't know that anything goes into it. It should look effortless. Crazy.
I love that.
Should I turn this around?
Yeah, can we see your painting?
Sure.
Whoa! Wait,
Well,
can you describe it?
Exactly what I heard.
The sound effect when you looked at it. Wait, I like you showing it to all the cameras.
Yeah. I don't know. I was feeling Keith Haring vibe.
Oh my
Keith
god,
Haring. It's kind of Keith Haring
Keith
inspired.
Haring. I love
Keith
that.
Haring. I don't even know.
It's perfect.
It just kind of came out.
I love
Maybe
it.
this is the idea that's yet to come
Yeah.
inside of the triangle. Also, I've been reading a book about the pyramids.
Love
So
it.
I'm feeling very Egyptian recently. Or I've just been thinking about the Egyptian pyramids.
I love it. I think this is probably the most creative painting we've had.
Really?
Mhm.
Electric. I know when-
Electric.
When you said the green grass, I was like, oh, I was going to do a landscape first. And then I was like, nah, let me do this.
That's so good.
Isn't that good?
Yeah,
Look
it's
at
so
that.
good. I like the little person worshiping the earth
Yeah. doing that,
and the pyramid.
That's how I feel all the time.
How does being so authentically yourself bring you ease?
I think it releases me from the worries of perception. I don't care what you think.
That's a good one.
I'm being myself.
Yes.
Take it or leave it. Some people won't like it, but whatever.
Bye.
Whatever. I keep saying it.
I love that.
Yeah,
I'm gonna
take it.
from you. Yeah.
Literally whatever.
Whatever.
Keeping it lighthearted, having fun with it.
I love it.
You know?
It's perfect.
I choose to make this fun and easy.
Life,
Mm.
even though life is crazy.
Life is crazy. That's my mom saying. I choose to make this fun and easy.
Wait, I'm gonna take that too.
Inspo.
Anytime you feel anything hard, you're just like, I choose to make this fun and easy. And I used to have a joke where my mom had a necklace that said fun and easy. I was like, Mom, that's not the same thing. Having a necklace that says fun and easy.
You're
No,
calling her out.
Shannon. But yeah, it's like, yeah, there's so many things to worry about all the time. If one of them doesn't have to be me or like how I'm perceived or what's going on, then thank God.
Yeah.
You know, I can just like, I'm myself, but I do have to like work hard, be kind to people. And that I think that brings me at ease when I'm not worried about like how I'm perceived. I think in your mid-20s, like right around where we are, you kind of start to solidify your personality. Your frontal cortex lobe develops at 26. And it's sort of a comforting feeling, I think.
It is.
Because at least for me, because I'm like figured out I like who I am.
This was like the most fun episode.
Wait, cool. I can't wait to see it. I'm so stoked. Actually,
LizaBanks, everybody.
LizaBanks.
How can people take a tour with you?
Ooh, fill out the form in my bio and tell me when you're coming to New York.
And where can we see you do your stand-up?
I'm hopefully going to have some dates in the fall. I'll be in Milwaukee in October. I'll be in potentially Charleston in late August, Chattanooga, Tennessee in October as well. And yeah, hopefully have more dates. And I'm always performing in New York. You can always come see me in New York.
Love it so much. Thank you so much for being on.
Come on.